A guy right here says this. Eric July is a tap dancing and there's a raccoon. So you can kind of use the context clues as far as what he's saying about me. He says we know this because we have nothing saying he explicitly supports Biden. Because I don't. He also says that's like being black and saying you don't support Grant in 1869. So this is hilarious, and it goes to, as you guys can see right here, this video of Van Jones literally crying about Joe Biden being elected. Like, boy, they ain't got no problem putting some weak ass black man on. Excuse me, that's a topic for another discussion. We'll handle that on a different video. But also you have this blue check mark who said black people voted for Joe Biden as a means of survival. We placed our hope in this election to reduce the harm and violence we experienced over the last 400 years. I wasn't aware that there are people that are still alive for 400 years. That's been alive for 400 years. That's impressive. That's very, very impressive. I was totally unaware that there are people like, are they what? Well, they can't be Asgardians because they have to be white. I'm not sure what they are for them to be living that long. But we'll see. But as you see, there's this collective effort for an odd reason of black people acting as if I personally, as well as you can tell by this tweet, but in general had to pledge allegiance to Joe Biden, Lord and Savior, Jesus Biden. And let me be clear as I can possibly be. That was never on the fucking table. It was never on the table. That was never on the table. That was never an option. It was never anything that I was going to do. Those of us that have been paying attention to politics, right, and aren't stupid little brainlets that go around and cling to politicians, right? We knew what Joe Biden was. Guy's been in office for a very long time. But like, I mean, when I say very long time, I mean like longer than I've been alive, literally. And this is how stupid a lot of people that voted for Democrats, like people were so insistent on, well, we got to get rid of Trump, right? Imagine hating Trump so much. For years, you've been bitching about police brutality, racial injustice, and so forth. You voted in an old ass white man that has said some very questionable things, authored or rather sponsored some very interesting bills that resulted in the absolute destruction of many black lives. And then you have the vice president who was a fucking cop, responsible for thousands as a DA, upon thousands of marijuana convictions, at least by way of black people. Maybe not all 1,000 of them, but you get my drift. That's how stupid these people are. They hate Trump so much that they vote in what they supposedly despise. That's interesting, ain't it? But this moronic idea that I, as a black person, was supposed to support Joe Biden as a means of survival. Well, let me be clear. I don't put my livelihood in the hands of politicians, particularly the fucking president. And this is why you don't see me freaking out, clutching my pearls or anything like that in the event that any of them get elected. That's because of what I realized, and like I said in my video, which was released before the election took place, I said that don't let the election results turn you into a crazy person, because that can happen. Right? Despite these guys being idiots, and despite these guys being authoritarians, for the most part, your livelihood is in your own personal hands. And I don't put my livelihood in the hands of politicians, certainly the president. This is a man that I don't know. This is a man that I will never meet. This is a man that I really don't have a desire to meet, as well as Kamala Khan. Her being a person of color, or that party parading around black people as if they are mindless zombies that can't move their world unless they move it for you. I'm not interested in that. That's not my kind of thing. People calling me coon and all sorts of weird names over the internet means absolutely nothing to me. And that's what I told that guy. You have no power here. I don't know where, like, obviously that's the go-to of a lot of black people. Some white people, they got no problem calling you Uncle Tom or something like that. But the go-to is like, okay, well, you didn't support my guy, therefore you're a lesser than black person. Imagine that, right? Treating black people, claiming to be anti-racist, treating black people as if they are this monolithic block of folks that have the same political positions. And this is why the old saying exists, all skin folk ain't kinfolk. I don't know y'all like that. I don't know y'all like that. And clearly from a, when you look at Van Jones, you look at this guy who called me that, you look at these weirdos, we ain't even on the same level here, bro, in terms of principles, right? You want something totally different. I'm not obligated to support you, advance your cause, because you the same color as me, or the white man that y'all put in front of to lead the charge certainly ain't got no problem leading behind, right? Imagine that, bitching and moaning about old white folks, and then support an old white man. Oh man, these guys, when will they ever learn? But like, I don't care for that. On a serious note, that's not anything that I've ever cared for. Well, I won't say maybe when I was a brainlet myself, but certainly as an adult male, like, we're not on the same team just because you and me, we the same color. You know what I'm saying? Like, we ain't on the same team just because you and me are the same color. Like, you on my team, if there is to be one in the first place, if you value the same principles as me. Clearly you don't. Certainly if you supported Joe Biden, you don't. But clearly you and I don't value the same thing. So where people get off in believing, or rather advocating, and rather trying to conjure up this narrative that you are a lesser than black person, not saying that's exclusive to black people, but you're a lesser than black person in the event that you don't support the person that they want you to support. These people will advance y'all's cause. It's like, imagine voting and supporting bigger government and then parading around as if you care about black people. As I've said, as the great Dr. Walter E. Williams has said, government, certainly, well, I would say, it's been the greatest tool of racist people. The greatest tool. When you look at the history of this country, I had a long form write up. You could probably read it. No, not probably. You can't go to beinglibertarian.com and read it. Where I talked about the history of government in this country. People think slavery was a private institution. That is not true. It's not even close to being true. You had slave codes fresh off the boat. Right? Slave codes, black codes. And then moving on to Jim Crow laws. The greatest tool of racist people have historically been the state. Has been the state. So you look at something like slavery, and then you move on and you look at things like Jim Crow laws. A lot of people assume, wrongfully so, that all private businesses were just racist. Not true. In fact, there's actually Supreme Court cases that you can look at. Plessy versus Ferguson is one that I refer to a lot. The Louisiana Boxcar Company that was involved in the Separate Boxcar Act. The Separate Boxcar Act in Louisiana was a statist mandate that required boxcars to be separate in terms of race. History lesson for you guys. Had to separate the colored folk from the white folk. Believe it or not, which a lot of people don't tell you, the history books certainly won't tell you this, is that when it came to that particular case, Homer Plessy versus Ferguson, the actual boxcar company that was involved was against that law in the Separate Boxcar Act. Why? Because it was an economic problem. They didn't care to separate white from black people. That was losing them money if they had to buy additional boxcars to separate white people from black people or colored folk from white folk. That wasn't anything that they were about. They were actually, believe it or not, against it. The state was what forced them to do that. Again, greatest tool of the racist. So we go through all of that, and we come to 2020, and these crackhead ass little dudes sitting there advocating for actual more government, and had a nerve to call me, of all people, a lesser than black person as they usher in more statism. I cannot take these people seriously. I can't. They're not to be taken serious. Ain't no white black leftist get to call me, or we can call me what he want to, but how am I supposed to take you serious? Like I said in here's a plug, recent song called Brainly that I released. Am I supposed to take you serious when all of your positions are socially expedient? These guys have absolutely no idea what the fuck they're talking about. So when they call me or some black person that decides to deviate from how they feel black people should be acting, and they call you a fake black person, as far as I'm concerned, that's a projection. And they call you that to cope with the fact that they are a brainlet controlled by the Joe Bidens of the world. And because you got enough sense to, let's say, not advocate that, they don't have the willpower. They don't got the nutsack. They don't got the gonads, the gall to be like, yeah, we may know that that's what it is that you want us to do, but how about we just don't do that, right? They don't got that nut power to do that. So what do? Place that evil on you. And they become so emotionally tied to political candidates that they crying on damn TV because Joe Biden was elected and Donald Trump is no longer, as it stands, could change, no longer going to be president going into January. And they think they won some because it's anything not Trump. I don't take these people seriously at all.